In a world ruled by instinct and ancient law, one forbidden glance shattered a thousand-year ritual. Kayla Vire, a nameless servant girl with nothing to lose, did what no one dared. She looked into the eyes of the Alpha King during the sacred choosing ceremony. What happened next broke bloodlines, defied councils, and proved that destiny doesn't care about your station. This is the story of how a nobody became everything, and how a king learned that true power isn't given, it's chosen. Stay until the end to see how one night in the forest changed an entire kingdom. Drop a like and comment which city you're watching from. The forest smelled like damp earth and old secrets. Kayla Vire pressed herself against the rough bark of an oak tree, her breath coming in shallow bursts that fogged in the cold night air. Her threadbare cloak, stolen from the laundry line that afternoon, clung to her shoulders, soaked through from the mist that rose from the forest floor. She could hear them now. Voices. Chanting. The low drum of ceremony echoing through the trees like a heartbeat. She shouldn't be here. Every law in the kingdom forbade it. Every warning she'd ever heard rang in her skull like bells. The ritual is sacred. The Alpha King chooses only from the bloodlines. Servants do not witness. Servants do not speak. Servants do not exist outside their station. But curiosity was a wicked thing, and Kayla had always been too curious for her own good. She moved closer, careful to avoid the dead branches scattered across the ground. Her boots, 3 sizes too large and stuffed with rags, made her steps clumsy, but she'd learned to walk quietly over the years. Invisibility was survival when you scrubbed floors in the lower halls of Drake Castle. Through the gaps in the trees, she saw light, torches arranged in a perfect circle, figures in white ceremonial robes, and in the center, standing alone, was him. Ronan Drake, Alpha King, ruler of the Northern Territories. Kayla's pulse hammered in her throat. She'd seen him before, of course. From a distance. Through doorways. In corridors where she'd pressed herself against the wall and dropped her gaze as he passed. But she'd never truly looked at him. Not like this. He stood at least a head taller than the tallest guard, his frame carved from muscle and wrapped in authority that needed no crown. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, half tied back in the warrior style. And even from here she could see the ink markings that spiraled across his bare chest, ancient symbols passed down through generations of Drake kings. His jaw was sharp enough to cut stone, his posture rigid, controlled, but it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Golden, burning, predatory. Right now they were closed as the high priestess circled him, murmuring prayers in the old tongue. Around the ritual circle stood 12 women, daughters of noble houses, each one beautiful, each one vetted by counsel and blood. They wore flowing gowns of pale silk, their hair braided with silver thread. They looked like offerings, like prizes. Kayla looked down at her own hands, stained brown from lye soap and rough from years of labor. Her nails were chipped, her fingers calloused. She didn't belong in the same world as those women, let alone the same forest. So why are you here? She didn't have an answer, only the pull. The need to see something beyond the stone walls and endless drudgery of her life. Just once. The high priestess raised her arms. The drumming stopped. Silence fell so heavy it pressed against Kayla's ribs. By blood and moon, by instinct and fate, the priestess intoned, her voice carrying through the clearing, the Alpha chooses. Not by sight, not by name, but by the call of what is meant to be. Ronan's eyes opened. Kayla's breath caught. His gaze swept across the circle of women, slow and deliberate. She watched each noble woman straighten under his attention, their faces painted with hope and nerves. This was it. The moment their families had prepared them for since birth. Whichever woman the Alpha's instincts recognized as his mate would become queen, would bear heirs, would shape the future of the kingdom. But something was wrong. Ronan's expression shifted, his brows drew together. His head tilted slightly, like a wolf catching an unfamiliar scent on the wind. The priestess noticed too. She stepped closer, concern flickering across her painted features. "My king?" she whispered. Ronan didn't answer. His gaze had stopped moving across the circle. Instead, it drifted outward, past the torches, past the ceremony, into the darkness of the forest, directly toward Kayla. No, no, there was no way. She was hidden. She was nothing. She was... His eyes locked onto hers. Time fractured. Kayla felt it like a fist to the chest, a rush of heat and terror and something else entirely, something she had no name for. The world narrowed to just the two of them. Everything else, the priestess, the noble daughters, the ancient ritual, dissolved into background noise. Ronan's entire body went rigid. His hands, which had been relaxed at his sides, curled into fists. A low sound rumbled from his chest. Not quite a growl. Not quite human. The priestess grabbed his arm. Alpha King, what? He moved. Not toward the women in the circle, toward the trees, toward her. Kayla's survival instincts kicked in like lightning. She ran. Branches tore at her cloak. Roots tried to trip her. Her two big boots slipped on wet leaves, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Behind her, she heard shouting, confusion, the ceremony collapsing into chaos. She didn't look back. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she pushed harder, crashing through underbrush like a hunted animal, because that's exactly what she was now. She'd broken the law, interrupted the most sacred rite in the kingdom, and worse, she'd been seen. By him. The castle loomed ahead through the trees, its stone walls and towers backlit by the rising moon. Kayla veered toward the servants' entrance, a narrow gap in the outer wall that led to the kitchens. She squeezed through, scraping her shoulder against rough stone, and burst into the dimly lit corridor beyond. Two other servants looked up from where they were hauling buckets of water. Kayla didn't stop to explain. She kept running, taking stairs two at a time, her heart threatening to crack her ribs. She didn't stop until she reached the tiny alcove where she slept, a space barely wider than a coffin, tucked beneath a back staircase in the eastern wing. She collapsed onto the thin mattress, pulling her knees to her chest, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. What did I just do? The question circled her mind like a vulture. She'd witnessed the ritual. She'd been caught. And the way Ronan had looked at her? No, that was impossible. She was imagining things. Panic playing tricks. He couldn't have actually sensed her. That wasn't how it worked. The Alpha King's instincts recognized mates among the bloodlines, among women of power and station. Not a servant girl who didn't even have a family name worth remembering. Kayla pressed her forehead against her knees and tried to breathe, tried to think. Maybe no one had seen her face clearly. Maybe in the darkness and confusion, she could just be another shadow. She'd go back to her duties tomorrow, keep her head down, disappear back into the invisibility she'd perfected over 18 years of life. It would be fine. It had to be fine, because the alternative was unthinkable. The castle woke early, as it always did. Kayla dragged herself from her alcove before dawn, her body aching from the run, her shoulder bruised purple from the wall. She splashed icy water on her face from the communal basin and braided her dark hair into a tight plait that hung between her shoulder blades. Her dress, gray, shapeless, identical to every other servant's uniform, smelled faintly of smoke and kitchen grease. She joined the morning line in the lower kitchens, accepting a bowl of thin porridge and a heel of yesterday's bread. The other servants barely glanced at her. Conversation hummed around her, but none of it was directed her way. That was how it had always been. Kayla Vier existed in the margins, seen but not noticed, present but not acknowledged. Usually that suited her fine. Today she wanted to sink into the floor. Did you hear? One of the laundry girls, Mira, leaned across the table toward her friend, eyes bright with gossip. The choosing ceremony was disrupted last night. Kayla's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. What? Another girl gasped. How? No one knows exactly, Mira said, dropping her voice to a dramatic whisper. But apparently the Alpha King sensed someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Some woman hiding in the forest. He abandoned the whole ritual, just walked off, left all 12 noble women standing there like fools. That's insane. I know. The High Priestess tried to stop him, but you know how he is. Once the wolf instinct takes over, Mira made a helpless gesture. The council is furious, Lady Thorne especially. At the mention of Lady Thorne, a chill ran down Kayla's spine. Lady Ilara de Thorne, head of the noble council, the woman who ran the castle with an iron fist wrapped in silk gloves. Her daughter Vivienne had been one of the 12 women in that circle last night. Vivienne, who was beautiful and educated and everything a future queen should be. Vivienne, who Lady Thorne had been grooming for this moment since birth. "They're saying," Mira continued, leaning in further, "that the king is hunting for whoever it was." The porridge turned to ash in Kayla's mouth. "Hunting? Why would he—" "Because she's his mate, obviously." Mira rolled her eyes like this should be clear. Why else would his instincts react like that? Whoever she is, noble or not, his wolf chose her, and now he won't stop until he finds her. The other girl whistled low. "Lady Thorne must be losing her mind." "Oh, she is. I heard her screaming at the guards this morning. Apparently the king left the castle before sunrise, took his personal guard and rode out into the territories. Didn't even tell the council where he was going." Kayla set down her spoon very carefully. Her hands were shaking again. "Eat up, girls!" The head cook's voice boomed across the kitchen. "Floors don't scrub themselves, and the east wing needs fresh linens before midday." The servants scattered to their duties. Kayla moved on autopilot, collecting her bucket and brush, heading toward the corridors that needed cleaning. Her mind raced in circles. "He's looking for me." No, that was ridiculous. He didn't know who she was. Couldn't know. It had been dark. She had been hidden, and she'd run before anyone could. But those eyes, the way they'd found her through the shadows, the way everything else had fallen away. Kayla scrubbed the same section of floor 3 times before she realized she'd stopped moving. She forced herself to focus, to breathe, one task at a time. That's how you survived. You didn't think about impossible things. You didn't dream about alpha kings and golden eyes and you. Kayla's head snapped up. A guard stood in the corridor, young, nervous, clearly not used to addressing servants. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "You're needed in the council chambers." The blood drained from Kayla's face. What?" "Council chambers, now." He gestured impatiently. "Lady Thorne wants to speak with all the serving girls who were on duty in the East Wing last night." Relief crashed through her so hard she nearly laughed. All the serving girls, not just her. This was routine. Lady Thorne probably wanted to question everyone, make sure no one saw anything improper during the disrupted ceremony. Kayla could handle questions. She'd been invisible her whole life. She could be invisible now. She followed the guard through the winding corridors, up 3 flights of stairs, into the administrative wing, where she'd only been a handful of times. The council chambers were vast, all dark wood and high ceilings and windows that let in cold northern light. A long table dominated the center of the room. At its head sat Lady Alara Thorne. She was 50, maybe older, with silver blonde hair pinned in an elaborate style and a face that might have been beautiful once, but had hardened into something sharp and calculating. Her dress was deep burgundy, cut to emphasize her status, and her fingers glittered with rings that probably cost more than Kayla would earn in 10 lifetimes. 3 other serving girls already stood along the wall, heads bowed. Kayla took her place beside them, mimicking their posture. Lady Thorne's cold gaze swept over them like a blade. "One of you," she said quietly, "was in the forest last night." Silence. Thick and suffocating. The Alpha King's ritual was disturbed by an unauthorized presence. A woman. Someone who had no right to witness what is sacred and exclusive to the noble bloodlines. Lady Thorne stood, her chair scraping against stone. "I want to know who." None of the girls moved. Kayla kept her eyes on the floor, her heart slamming against her ribs. "Speak now," Lady Thorne continued, her voice dropping to something dangerous, "and your punishment will be measured. Remain silent, and I promise you, when I discover the truth, and I will, the consequences will be severe." Kayla's throat felt like it was closing. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. If she confessed, what would happen? Exile? Prison? Worse? If she stayed silent and was caught later? Very well. Lady Thorne's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You're all dismissed, for now. But understand this. I have eyes everywhere in this castle. If any of you know something and choose to protect the guilty party, you will share her fate." The guard gestured sharply, and the serving girls fled like startled birds. Kayla's legs barely carried her back down the stairs, through the corridors, into the relative safety of the lower halls. She made it to a storage closet before her knees gave out. Pressing her back against the shelves of folded linens, Kayla covered her face with her hands and tried to think, tried to breathe. Lady Thorne was hunting. The Alpha King was hunting, both of them, from different directions, closing in on the same target, on her. And Kayla had no idea what to do. No family to protect her. No allies to turn to. No money to run with. She was nothing. Nobody. A servant whose disappearance wouldn't even warrant a notice in the morning ledgers. The smart thing would be to confess. Throw herself at Lady Thorne's mercy and hope. But even as she thought it, Kayla knew it wouldn't work. There was no mercy in Alara Thorne's eyes. Only calculation, only fury that her daughter hadn't been chosen, that the careful plans of years had been shattered by some nameless girl who dared to exist in the wrong place at the wrong time. So what then? Hide forever. Hope they forgot. The door to the closet creaked open. Kayla's head jerked up, terror flooding her system, but it was only Pip, a scrawny boy of maybe 12 who worked in the stables. He looked almost as frightened as she felt. "Kayla," he whispered, "you need to see something." "What? Pip, I can't." "Just come, please." Against her better judgment, Kayla followed him through the servants' passages, down into the depths of the castle where the stables connected to the lower courtyards. Pip led her to a small window that looked out onto the main gates. And there, riding through those gates on a massive black warhorse, was Ronan Drake. He looked like he'd been riding for days. Dust clung to his leather riding gear. His jaw was shadowed with stubble, but his eyes, those impossible golden eyes, were sharp and focused as they swept across the castle grounds. "He came back an hour ago," Pip whispered. "Didn't say nothing to nobody, just went straight to his chambers. But Kayla, people are saying he's going to search the whole castle, every room, every servant, until he finds her." Kayla's lungs refused to work. She watched as Ronan dismounted in one fluid motion, handed the reins to a stable hand without looking at him, and strode toward the main entrance with the kind of purpose that made guards scramble out of his path. He wasn't giving up, wasn't forgetting. And suddenly, Kayla understood with terrible clarity that her life had split into two paths the moment those golden eyes had found hers in the forest. She could keep running, keep hiding, and eventually be found. Or she could do something so reckless, so absolutely insane that even thinking it made her dizzy. She could go to him first. The decision settled in her chest like a stone dropped into deep water. Kayla stood at that window for 3 more heartbeats, watching Ronan disappear into the castle's main entrance, then turned to Pip with a steadiness that surprised even her. "If anyone asks," she said quietly, "you haven't seen me." Pip's eyes went wide. "Kayla, what are you—" But she was already moving, slipping back through the servants' passages, with her mind racing ahead of her feet. This was insane. This was suicide. But hiding hadn't worked for anyone in the history of Drakey Castle, and she'd be damned if she'd spend the next week jumping at shadows, waiting for Lady Thorne's guards to drag her out by her hair. If Ronan was going to find her anyway, better it happen on her terms. The problem was getting to him. The Alpha King's chambers were in the North Tower, accessible only through guarded corridors that servants didn't enter unless explicitly summoned. Kayla had scrubbed those halls exactly twice in 3 years, both times under the watchful glare of senior staff who treated her like she might steal the tapestries. But there was another way, a route most people had forgotten about. Kayla ducked into the old laundry room, the one that had been abandoned after the new facilities were built in the western wing. Dust coated everything. Cobwebs hung from the rafters like decorations from some long-dead celebration. She moved to the back corner where a ventilation shaft, wide enough for a small person, led up through the castle's infrastructure. She'd discovered it years ago when she was younger and even more invisible, exploring the parts of the castle no one cared about. The shaft connected to an old servants' passage that ran behind the North Tower. If she could make it through without getting stuck or making noise. Kayla pulled off her boots, tied them to her belt, and climbed in. The metal was cold against her palms, the space narrow enough that her shoulders scraped both sides. She inched forward on her stomach, trying not to think about what would happen if someone found her wedged in here like a trapped rat. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Her breath echoed too loud in the confined space. After what felt like an hour but was probably only minutes, she reached the junction where the shaft met the old passage. Kayla wriggled through, dropped onto stone flooring, and stood in darkness so complete she had to feel her way along the wall. Her fingers found the grooves she remembered, marks left by builders a century ago. She followed them until she reached the narrow door, no bigger than a cupboard, that opened into the corridor behind the North Tower's guest rooms. Kayla pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. Or near enough. Distant voices, but far away. She pushed the door open an inch, peered through. Empty corridor, torches burning in their brackets, thick carpets that would muffle footsteps. Now or never. Kayla slipped through, eased the door shut behind her, and moved quickly toward the tower stairs. Her bare feet made no sound. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib, but she kept moving, kept breathing, kept, "You there!" She froze. A guard appeared at the top of the stairs, young and sharp-eyed, his hand already moving to the sword at his hip. "This area is restricted. How did you—" "I need to see the Alpha King," Kayla said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. The guard blinked, then laughed. Actually laughed. "Right, and I need to see the High Priestess naked. Get back to the kitchens before I— Tell him Kayla Vire is here." She lifted her chin, forcing her voice steady, even though her knees were shaking. "Tell him I'm the one from the forest." The laughter died. The guard stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" He didn't answer, just kept staring. Then, slowly, his expression shifted from disbelief to something closer to shock. "Wait here," he said finally, and disappeared up the stairs 2 at a time. Kayla waited. Her pulse counted the seconds, 30, 40, 60. What if Ronan refused to see her? What if the guard came back with Lady Thorne's people instead? What if— The guard reappeared, slightly out of breath, his face carefully blank. "Come with me." She followed him up the spiral staircase, past 2 more checkpoints where guards looked at her with open confusion, and finally to a set of double doors carved with the Drake family crest, a wolf's head surrounded by oak leaves. The guard knocked once. "My lord, the girl." "Send her in." That voice, deep and rough like gravel under silk. Kayla had heard it from a distance a dozen times, but never directed at her, never meant for her ears. The doors opened. Ronan's chambers were nothing like she'd imagined. No excessive gold, no elaborate decorations, just clean lines, dark wood, and windows that overlooked the northern forest. Maps covered one wall. Weapons, swords, bows, knives, hung on another in neat rows. A desk sat near the window, piled with reports and correspondence. And in the center of it all stood Ronan Drakey. He changed from his riding gear into simple dark pants and a loose shirt that did nothing to hide the breadth of his shoulders. His hair was still damp from washing. His feet were bare. He looked less like a king and more like a predator who'd just returned to his den. His golden eyes locked onto hers, and the bottom dropped out of Kayla's stomach. "Close the door," Ronan said without looking away from her. The guard obeyed. The latch clicked. They were alone. Kayla's mouth went dry. Every plan she'd half-formed on the way here evaporated like morning mist. She stood there, barefoot and dusty from the ventilation shaft, her servant's dress hanging on her frame like a sack, and tried to remember how to breathe. Ronan circled her slowly, not touching, just looking. His gaze cataloged everything, the bruise on her shoulder, the scrape on her cheek from branches, the way her hands trembled at her sides. "You ran," he said finally. It wasn't a question, but Kayla answered anyway. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was terrified." "Of me?" "Of everything." The words came out sharper than she intended. "I broke the law. I interrupted your ritual. I'm a servant. I'm nothing. Of course I ran." Something flickered across his expression. He stopped circling, standing directly in front of her now, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You're not nothing," he said quietly. "Tell that to Lady Thorne. Tell that to anyone in this castle. I scrub floors. I carry water. People look through me like I'm made of glass." Kayla's voice cracked despite her best efforts. "You're the Alpha King. I'm nobody. This, whatever you think happened in the forest, it's a mistake." "No mistake." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Ronan's jaw tightened. "I've spent the last 3 days searching every village in the Northern Territories because my wolf wouldn't let me rest. Because, for the first time in my life, my instincts responded to someone who wasn't standing in that damned circle. And when I finally gave up and came back here, I was planning to tear this castle apart stone by stone until I found you." He paused. "Then you walked in on your own." Kayla's throat felt like it was closing. "I came because hiding is worse than facing it. Smart. It's not smart, it's desperate. There's a difference." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire burning in the hearth. "What happens now? You found me. What are you going to do?" Ronan studied her for a long moment. Then he crossed to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter, and held one out to her. Kayla stared at it. "I'm not allowed." "You're in my chambers. My rules." He pressed the glass into her hand. "Drink. You look like you're about to fall over." The liquor burned going down, but it steadied her. Kayla took another sip, then set the glass on the desk before she did something stupid like drain it. "I need you to understand something," Ronan said, his voice dropping lower. "The mate bond isn't a choice. It's recognition. My wolf knows what it knows, and it chose you. That means you're under my protection now, whether you accept it or not." "Your protection?" Kayla laughed, the sound bitter. "Do you know what Lady Thorn will do when she finds out? She's already questioning servants, already hunting. Her daughter was supposed to be chosen. This entire ritual was supposed to secure her family's position, and I—" She cut herself off, shaking her head. "You can't protect me from that. Watch me. You're a king, not invincible. The council serves at my pleasure, not the other way around." Ronan set his own glass down with enough force that the crystal rang. "I don't give a damn about their politics or their bloodline games. My wolf chose you. That's the end of it." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because it couldn't be. Because people like Kayla didn't get happy endings. Because the world didn't work that way, where servant girls caught the eye of kings and lived to tell about it. Because—" A sharp knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "My lord," the guard's voice tight with tension. "Lady Thorn is here. She's demanding an audience." Kayla's blood turned to ice. Ronan's expression went hard as stone. "Tell her I'm occupied." "I did, my lord. She's insisting. Says it's regarding the disrupted ritual and a matter of castle security." Of course she was. Of course she'd figured it out already. Lady Thorn had eyes everywhere, and Kayla had been foolish to think she could slip through the castle unnoticed. "Kayla!" Ronan's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "Stay here. Don't leave this room." "She knows," Kayla whispered. "She has to know, or she wouldn't be here." "I don't care what she knows." He looked at the door, then back at her, and something in his eyes made her chest ache. "Trust me. Please." She wanted to. The desperate, reckless part of her that had climbed through ventilation shafts and walked into the Alpha King's chambers wanted to believe he could fix this. But trust was a luxury Kayla had never been able to afford. Still, she nodded. Ronan released her wrist and crossed to the door, opening it just enough to step into the corridor. Kayla heard voices. His, low and controlled, and Lady Thorn's, sharp as broken glass. "Completely unacceptable, my lord. The ritual was sacred, and the disruption has been addressed." "Addressed? You abandoned the ceremony, left 12 noble daughters standing in that circle like fools while you chased after some phantom in the woods." "Not a phantom." Ronan's voice carried a warning edge that would have made Kayla step back if she'd been in Lady Thorn's position. "And not your concern." A pause, then dangerously quiet. "Everything that happens in this castle is my concern. The council demands answers. Your behavior has been erratic at best, and if there's someone in this castle who violated the sacred laws—" "There is." Kayla's heart stopped. "And I've found her," Ronan continued. "The matter is resolved." "Then bring her before the council. Let us determine the appropriate punishment for such a transgression." "No." Another pause, longer this time. Kayla could almost feel the rage building in the corridor. "My lord," Lady Thorn said, her voice trembling with barely controlled fury, "you cannot simply ignore centuries of law because I can do whatever I want. I'm the Alpha King." He said it flatly, without arrogance, just stating fact. "The woman from the forest is under my protection. The matter is closed. If the council has concerns, they can bring them to me directly during the next session." "Your protection." Lady Thorn's laugh was cold enough to freeze fire. Is this about the bond? Did your wolf actually choose some random girl over your daughter? Ronan finished. Yes. And before you waste both our time with politics and bloodline arguments, understand this. I don't care. The bond chose who it chose. Vivienne is a lovely girl, I'm sure, but she's not my mate. Neither were the other 11. So unless you have actual castle business to discuss, this conversation is over. Silence fell like a hammer. Then Lady Thorne's voice, so soft and venomous it made Kayla's skin crawl. You're making a mistake. Noted. Anything else? Footsteps. Retreating, sharp and angry. Ronan stood in the corridor for another minute, probably making sure she was really gone, then stepped back into his chambers and closed the door. His jaw was tight. A muscle jumped in his cheek. That went well, Kayla said weakly. He turned to look at her, and despite everything, despite the fear and the impossible situation and the fact that her life had just become exponentially more complicated, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. You're still here. You told me not to leave. Yeah, I half expected you to climb back through whatever passage you used to get here the moment the door closed. Kayla blinked. How did you have dust in your hair and cobwebs on your dress. And I know every official entrance to this tower. None of them would have let you pass. He crossed the room, stopping just in front of her again. You're resourceful. I'll give you that. I'm desperate. There's still a difference. Maybe. His hand came up, and for a second Kayla thought he might touch her, but he just brushed a cobweb from her shoulder. Lady Thorne won't let this go. I know. She'll come at you indirectly, through the other servants, through castle policy, through every angle she can find. I know that too. Kayla's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Which is why I should leave, tonight, before this gets worse. No. Ronan. No. He said it firmly, no room for argument. You run now, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, and I'll spend the rest of mine hunting you down again. Neither of us wants that. So what then? I just stay here and wait for her to destroy me? You stay here under my protection. You move into quarters befitting someone under the Alpha King's care. You stop sleeping in whatever closet they've been keeping you in. His eyes narrowed. Where do you sleep? Kayla hesitated. There's an alcove under the back stairs. His expression went flat. An alcove. It's fine. It's warm enough, and no one bothers me. That ends today. Ronan crossed to his desk, scrawled something on a piece of parchment, and sealed it with wax. This goes to the housekeeping staff. You'll have a proper room in the East Wing by tonight, meals from the main kitchens, not whatever scraps they've been feeding servants, and clothes that actually fit. I can't. Yes, you can, because like it or not, you're my mate, and that comes with certain protections, certain privileges, whether you want them or not. Kayla's head spun. This was happening too fast. Yesterday she'd been invisible. Today she was standing in the Alpha King's chambers being offered a life she couldn't even imagine. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. People will talk. Let them. Lady Thorne will. Let her. Ronan moved closer, and this time he did touch her, his hand coming up to cup her jaw with surprising gentleness. His palm was warm, calloused, real. I know this is terrifying. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but you walked in here instead of running, and that took more courage than most people have in their entire lives. So trust it. Trust yourself. And trust me when I say I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Kayla's breath caught. She'd never been touched like this, like she was something precious, something worth protecting. It made her want to believe him. It made her want to cry. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Neither do I. A rueful smile crossed his face. I was supposed to choose a noble daughter, produce heirs, maintain political alliances. Instead, my wolf chose a girl who climbed through my ventilation system, so we're both figuring it out. Despite everything, Kayla laughed. It came out shaky and half broken, but it was real. The moment shattered when someone screamed, not close, somewhere below in the castle's lower levels, but loud enough, urgent enough that both of them tensed. Ronan's hand dropped from her face. He crossed to the door in 3 strides, yanked it open. What was that? The guard looked pale. I don't know, my lord. It came from another scream, then shouting, footsteps thundering through corridors. Ronan swore under his breath and grabbed a sword from the wall. Stay here, he told Kayla. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me. What's happening? I don't know yet. He was already moving, the guard falling in behind him. But I'm going to find out. The door slammed. Kayla stood frozen for 3 heartbeats, then crossed the room and threw the bolt. Her hand shook as she pressed her back against the wood, listening to the chaos building somewhere below. More shouting, running, the sound of something heavy crashing. Then, cutting through it all, a voice Kayla recognized, Pip, the stable boy, screaming her name. Kayla! Kayla, they're coming! They're... His voice cut off abruptly. Kayla's heart launched into her throat. She grabbed the bolt, started to pull it back, then stopped. Ronan had told her to stay, had told her to lock the door. But Pip had helped her, had warned her. And now he was screaming her name in the corridors like he was being dragged away. The decision took less than a second. Kayla threw open the door and ran. The corridors were chaos. Servants fled in every direction. Guards shouted orders. And there, at the far end of the hallway, she saw them. 2 of Lady Thorne's personal guards, hauling Pip between them. The boy's face was bloody. He was fighting, kicking, but they were twice his size. Let him go! Kayla shouted. Everyone froze, turned, stared. One of Lady Thorne's guards, a massive man with a scar across his jaw, smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. There you are, he said. Lady Thorne wants a word. I don't care what she wants. Let the boy go. He didn't do anything. He helped you break into restricted areas, aided in violating castle security. The guard shrugged. That's a flogging offense. Maybe worse. Pip's eyes were wide with terror. Kayla, run! The guard cuffed him across the head hard enough to snap his neck sideways. Quiet! Something inside Kayla cracked. Maybe it was the fear that had been building for days. Maybe it was the rage at a system that crushed people like her and Pip without a second thought. Maybe it was just 3 years of being invisible finally boiling over. She stepped forward. You want me? Fine. I'm right here. Let him go and take me instead. Kayla, no! Pip struggled harder. Don't. I said take me. She lifted her chin, meeting the guard's eyes. The boy's just a stable hand. He doesn't know anything. I'm the one who was in the forest. I'm the one who broke your sacred laws. So let him go, and we'll settle this. The guard considered this. Then he shoved Pip toward another servant. Hold him. Don't let him leave. He advanced on Kayla, hand reaching for her arm. And that's when Ronan appeared at the end of the corridor like a storm made flesh. Touch her, he said quietly, and you'll lose that hand. The entire hallway went silent. The guard froze mid-reach. Slowly, very slowly, he lowered his arm and turned to face the Alpha King. Ronan walked toward them with deliberate steps, his sword still in hand, though he held it loosely at his side. His expression was calm, almost pleasant, which somehow made him more terrifying than if he'd been raging. Explain, he said, why Lady Thorne's guards are dragging children through my castle and threatening my people. My lord, the scarred guard bowed stiffly. We were securing a potential security breach. This boy was seen helping the servant girl who is under my protection, as I already explained to Lady Thorne not 15 minutes ago. Ronan stopped directly in front of the man, close enough that the guard had to look up to meet his eyes. So unless you'd like to explain to her why you ignored a direct order from your Alpha King, I suggest you release the boy and leave. Now. The guard's jaw worked. His hand twitched toward his sword. Bad idea. Ronan's blade came up so fast Kayla barely saw it move. The tip rested against the guard's throat before he could blink. Don't, Ronan said softly. The guard went very, very still. My lord, he managed. Lady Thorne has authority over castle staff. She has the right to question servants about their duties, not to drag them through hallways bleeding, not to threaten them, and certainly not to lay hands on anyone I've claimed as mine. The sword pressed a fraction harder, dimpling skin. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to release that boy. You're going to leave this corridor. And you're going to tell Lady Thorne that if she wants to discuss castle security, She can schedule an appointment through proper channels like everyone else. Clear? The guard managed a tight nod. Ronan lowered his sword, stepped back. Go. They went, fast, practically running by the time they reached the stairs. The corridor remained frozen for another heartbeat, everyone too shocked to move. Then Pip broke free from the servant holding him and stumbled toward Kayla. You shouldn't have done that, he gasped, blood streaming from his split lip. They were going to... I know. Kayla caught him before he fell. I know, it's okay. You're okay. Ronan sheathed his sword and crossed to them both. He looked down at Pip with an expression Kayla couldn't quite read. What's your name? He asked. Pip, my lord. I work in the stables. You helped her? Pip swallowed hard, nodded. Good. Ronan pulled a cloth from his pocket and handed it to the boy. Clean your face, then go to the healers. Tell them I sent you. Anyone gives you trouble, you tell them to take it up with me personally. Pip stared at him like he'd sprouted wings. My lord, Thank you. Thank you, Go. The boy went, still clutching the cloth, glancing back at Kayla with eyes full of questions she couldn't answer. When he was gone, Ronan turned to face the remaining servants and guards in the corridor. His voice carried clear and cold. Kayla Vire is under my personal protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or makes her life difficult in any way will answer to me. Spread the word. Then he took Kayla's hand, just took it, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and led her back toward his chambers. Kayla's mind reeled. Her heart hammered. She was dimly aware of people staring, whispering, but it all felt distant, unreal. They reached his chambers. He closed the door, locked it. Then he turned to her, and his expression cracked just enough to show the anger underneath. I told you to stay here. I heard Pip screaming. I don't care if you heard the castle collapsing. I told you to stay safe. His hands curled into fists. Do you have any idea what could have happened if I hadn't? But you did. Kayla's own anger flared hot and bright. You showed up, like you promised. So I was right to go, because now Pip's safe, and now Lady Thorne knows exactly who you are and exactly how much I'll do to protect you. Ronan's voice dropped low, almost a growl. Which means she'll come at you harder, smarter, and I can't be everywhere at once. Then what am I supposed to do? Hide in your chambers forever? Let people like Pip get hurt because I'm too scared to... Yes! The word came out louder than he probably intended. He caught himself, took a breath. Yes. For now. Until I can secure your position properly. Until the council accepts this. Until I'm something other than a servant. Kayla pulled her hand free from his. That's what you mean, isn't it? Until I'm noble enough or important enough that protecting me doesn't make you look weak. That's not... It is. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly exhausted. You can call me your mate. You can give me fancy rooms and protection. But at the end of the day, I'm still Kayla Vire. Still nobody. And Lady Thorne knows that. Everyone knows that, including me. Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a rough sound, half bitter. You think I care about appearances? About what the council thinks? He shook his head. I'm the first Alpha King in 3 generations to refuse the chosen ceremony, to claim a mate outside the bloodlines. My mother is rolling in her grave right now, and half the Northern Lords probably want my head. And you know what? I don't care. Because my wolf chose you, not some perfect noble daughter. You. And that means something. What does it mean? Kayla's voice cracked. Tell me. Because I don't understand any of this. Ronan crossed the space between them in 2 strides. His hands came up to frame her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. It means you're mine, he said quietly. Not my property. Not my servant. Mine. My equal. My match. The other half of something I didn't even know was incomplete until you looked at me through those trees. His thumb brushed across her cheek. And I will burn this entire castle to the ground before I let anyone take that away. Kayla's breath hitched. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. But before she could answer, before she could say anything at all, a knock sounded at the door. Hard and urgent. My lord! A different guard this time, voice tight with stress. You need to come. Now. Lady Thorne has called an emergency council session. She's demanding your immediate presence. Ronan's jaw clenched so hard Kayla heard his teeth grind. Tell her, she's brought half the noble families with her, my lord. They're in the great hall, waiting. A pause. Then, very quietly, of course she has. He looked down at Kayla, and she saw the calculation in his eyes, the decision being made. You stay here, he said. I mean it this time. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. I'll handle the council. Ronan, please. He pressed his forehead against hers briefly, achingly gentle. Please, just do this. For me. She nodded because she didn't trust her voice. He released her, grabbed his sword belt from where he'd dropped it, and strode toward the door, paused with his hand on the latch. Kayla? Yeah? When I get back, we're going to finish this conversation. And then I'm going to teach you how to use a knife, because clearly I can't trust you to stay out of trouble. Despite everything, she smiled. Deal. He left. The door closed. The bolt clicked into place. And Kayla stood alone in the Alpha King's chambers, listening to his footsteps fade down the corridor, and wondered how long it would take for Lady Thorne to tear everything apart. She lasted 20 minutes before the walls started closing in. Kayla paced the length of Ronan's chambers, her bare feet wearing a path in the carpet between the window and the door. 20 minutes of listening to her own breathing. 20 minutes of imagining what was happening in that great hall. Lady Thorne with her venom and her noble allies. Ronan standing alone against a council that wanted him to choose their way, not his wolf's way. 20 minutes of being useless. She pressed her forehead against the cold window glass, staring out at the northern forest. From here she could see the edge of the ritual clearing, just visible through the trees. The place where everything had started, where her stupid curiosity had collided with fate and torn her life into pieces. A knock at the door made her jump. It's me, a female voice called. Not hostile, but not friendly either. I've been sent to escort you. Kayla's pulse kicked up. Escort me where? The Alpha King requests your presence in the Great Hall. That didn't make sense. Ronan had explicitly told her to stay here, to not open the door for anyone, unless something had changed, unless the council had demanded, I need confirmation, Kayla said carefully. What did he tell you to say? A pause. He didn't tell me anything. Lady Thorne sent me. She said you'd want to hear what's being decided about your future. Ice flooded Kayla's veins. Tell Lady Thorne, she said slowly, clearly, that I'm staying exactly where I am. That's not wise. I don't care. Another pause. Then footsteps retreating down the corridor. Kayla backed away from the door, her heart hammering. That had been a test. Or a trap. Or both. Lady Thorne was trying to draw her out, away from Ronan's protection, into a space where the door to the antechamber burst open. Kayla spun, reaching for anything she could use as a weapon, but it was only Pip. The stable boy looked worse than before. His lip was swelling, a bruise darkening his jaw, but his eyes were sharp with urgency. How did you get in here? Kayla demanded. Servant's passage. Same one you used. He was breathing hard, like he'd been running. Kayla, you need to leave, now. Ronan told me to stay. Ronan doesn't know what Lady Thorne's planning. Pip grabbed her arm. I was in the kitchens. I heard her guards talking. She's going to the council with evidence that you used forbidden magic to seduce the Alpha King, that you're a witch or a sorceress or something, and that's why his wolf responded to you instead of the noble daughters. Kayla's stomach dropped. That's insane. I don't have any magic. I can't even... Doesn't matter if it's true. She's got 3 witnesses who'll swear they saw you performing rituals in the forest. She's got testimony from servants who'll say you bragged about enchanting him. Pip's fingers dug into her arm. She's making you into a threat to the entire kingdom, and the council's going to believe her because it's easier than accepting that their Alpha King chose a servant. Ronan won't let them. Ronan's one man against the entire noble council. They can overrule him on matters of kingdom security. It's in the old laws. Pip pulled her toward the antechamber. If they declare you a threat, they can arrest you, imprison you, execute you, and there's nothing he can do about it until the trial, which Lady Thorne will make sure never happens. Kayla's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. But Pip's terror was real. The bruises on his face were real. And Lady Thorne's rage, that was very, very real. Where am I supposed to go? Kayla whispered. Anywhere but here. The forest, the outer villages. There's a woman in Northgate who helps people disappear. I can get you there, but we have to leave now before... Footsteps in the corridor. Multiple sets. Moving fast. Pip's eyes went wide. They're coming! Kayla's survival instinct screamed at her to run, to trust Pip, to get out before Lady Thorne's guards dragged her to whatever fate they'd prepared. But Ronan had told her to stay, had promised to handle the council, had looked at her like she was something worth fighting for. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Kayla Vire, Lady Thorne's voice, cold and precise. By order of the noble council, you are to be taken into custody pending investigation of crimes against the kingdom. Open this door or we will break it down. Don't, Pip hissed. Please, Kayla, we can still... But Kayla was already moving toward the door. Not to open it. To buy time. What crimes? She called out. Sedition, use of forbidden magic, conspiracy to undermine the sacred rituals. Lady Thorne's voice dripped false sympathy. I know you're frightened, child, but running will only make things worse. Come peacefully, and you'll be treated fairly. Lies. Every word dripping with lies. Kayla looked at Pip, looked at the antechamber where the servants' passage waited, then looked back at the door separating her from Lady Thorne and whatever trumped-up charges she'd manufactured. She could run, save herself, let Ronan come back to find her gone, and spend the rest of his life wondering. Or she could open that door and face this head-on, trusting that somehow, against all logic, he'd keep his promise. Her hand went to the bolt. Kayla, no! She threw the door open. Lady Thorne stood in the corridor with 6 guards, all armed. Her expression was perfectly composed. Not triumphant, not angry, just coldly satisfied. Behind her, Kayla could see other faces. Servants, staff, people she'd worked beside for years, now watching her with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. Wise choice, Lady Thorne said. Take her. 2 guards moved forward. Kayla stepped back instinctively, but there was nowhere to go. They grabbed her arms, not gently, and hauled her into the corridor. Wait, Kayla managed. The Alpha King is currently occupied with council business. He'll be informed of your arrest, of course. Lady Thorne's smile was razor thin. I'm sure he'll be very disappointed to learn what you truly are. I'm not a witch. I don't have any magic. This is quiet. One of the guards shook her hard enough to rattle her teeth. You'll have a chance to speak at your trial. What trial? You just said... But they were already dragging her down the corridor, away from Ronan's chambers, away from any hope of protection. Kayla twisted, trying to see if Pip had followed, but the boy had vanished. Smart. At least one of them had sense. They hauled her through the castle, taking routes that avoided the main halls. Servants' passages. Back stairwells. Places where no one important would see. Kayla's mind spun through options, but every scenario ended the same way. Her, alone, against Lady Thorne's manufactured evidence and the council's willingness to believe it. The guards stopped at a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. One of them produced a key, twisted it in the lock. The door swung open on hinges that screamed from disuse. Stone steps led down into darkness. The old dungeons? Kayla's voice came out higher than she wanted. You can't. I can do whatever I want to protect this kingdom from threats. Lady Thorne appeared beside her, close enough that Kayla could smell her perfume, roses and something sharper underneath. You made a mistake thinking you could have him, that someone like you could ever be anything more than what you are. He chose me, Kayla said, lifting her chin even though her knees were shaking. His wolf chose me. You can't change that. No, but I can make sure you're not around to benefit from it. Lady Thorne nodded to the guards. Take her down. Cell 7. No visitors, no food until I say otherwise. They dragged her down the stairs. The temperature dropped with each step. The air grew damp and stale, thick with the smell of mold and old suffering. At the bottom, a narrow corridor stretched into darkness, broken only by iron-barred cells on either side. Most were empty. A few held shapes that might have been people once. Cell 7 was at the far end. The guards threw her inside hard enough that she hit the far wall and crumpled. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Footsteps retreated back up the stairs. Then silence. Kayla sat in the darkness, her shoulders screaming from the impact, and tried to breathe through the panic clawing at her throat. This was bad. This was worse than bad. Even if Ronan figured out where they'd taken her, even if he came down here himself, Lady Thorne had made her move in front of witnesses, had used the council's authority. Ronan couldn't just break her out without defying the entire governing structure of the kingdom. She was trapped. Time stopped meaning anything down here. Minutes or hours could have passed. Kayla couldn't tell. She sat with her back against the cold stone wall, arms wrapped around her knees, and tried to think. The sound of footsteps made her head snap up. Not from the stairs, from deeper in the dungeon. Slow, deliberate steps that echoed off stone. A figure emerged from the shadows between cells, tall, female, moving with the kind of grace that came from years of training. As she stepped into the dim light filtering down from above, Kayla recognized her. Vivian Thorne, Lady Thorne's daughter, the woman who should have been chosen. She was beautiful in the way noble daughters always were. Pale skin, golden hair, delicate features that probably inspired poets. She wore a simple dress, no jewelry, and her expression was carefully neutral. "So you're her," Vivian said quietly. "The servant who stopped a ritual." Kayla pushed herself to her feet, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. "If you're here to gloat, I'm not." Vivian glanced back toward the stairs, then stepped closer to the bars. "I'm here because my mother is going to kill you. Maybe not today. Maybe not obviously. But she will make sure you disappear and no one will ask too many questions about a servant girl who dabbled in dark magic." I know. Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. "I was in that circle. I felt what happened when he sensed you. That wasn't magic. That was the bond. Real and undeniable. Which is why my mother can't let you live." Kayla's throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want to be queen." The words came out flat, almost bitter. "I never did. My mother has been grooming me for this since I was 6 years old, and all I've ever wanted is to choose my own path. So when the Alpha King's wolf didn't choose me, I was relieved." She paused, "until I realized my mother would rather destroy you than accept that outcome. So what am I supposed to do? Your mother has guards everywhere. The council believes her lies. And Ronan," Kayla's voice cracked, "even if he wanted to help, defying the council would make him look weak, would undermine everything. Then you can't be here when he tries." Vivian reached into her dress and pulled out a key. Iron, old, identical to the one the guard had used. "There's a passage at the end of this corridor, leads to the outer cisterns. From there you can reach the forest." Kayla stared at the key. "Why would you help me?" "Because my mother has controlled my entire life, every decision, every breath, and I'm tired of watching her destroy people who get in her way." Vivian's hand trembled slightly as she pushed the key through the bars. "Take it. Leave before she comes back. Don't tell anyone I helped you." "If they find out," "They won't. I'm her perfect daughter. She'd never suspect me." Vivian's smile was sad and sharp. "Besides, someone should get a happy ending out of this mess." Kayla took the key. Her fingers closed around cold metal, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. This was it. Her chance. Her only chance. "Thank you," she whispered. Vivian nodded once, then turned and walked back into the shadows. Her footsteps faded, disappeared. Kayla stood frozen for 3 heartbeats, then moved. She unlocked the cell door, wincing at the scrape of metal on metal, slipped into the corridor, moved toward the far end where Vivian had indicated. And there it was. A gap in the stone wall, barely visible, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Kayla took one last look back at the stairs, thought about Ronan, about the promise in his eyes, about everything she was leaving behind. Then she stepped into the passage and disappeared into the darkness. The cisterns were exactly as terrible as she'd imagined. Dark, wet, smelling of things she didn't want to identify. Kayla felt her way along slime-covered walls, her bare feet slipping on stone worn smooth by centuries of water flow. Somewhere above, she could hear the castle. Voices. Movement. Life continuing while she crawled through its underbelly like a rat. The passage opened into a larger chamber where runoff from the castle drained into underground channels. Kayla could see faint light ahead, moonlight maybe, filtering through a grate that led outside. She was going to make it. She was actually going to... Well, well, oh! Kayla spun. Lady Thorne stood in the passage behind her, flanked by two guards. She looked perfectly composed despite the filth of the cisterns, like she'd expected this exact scenario. Did you really think my daughter would betray me? Lady Thorne smiled. I raised her better than that. Everything she does for our family, including setting the perfect trap. Kayla's heart stopped. Vivian is currently informing the council that you escaped custody using stolen keys, proving you had accomplices and magical abilities. Lady Thorne stepped forward. Which gives me legal authority to handle you as a threat to kingdom security. No trial needed, no questions asked. The guards moved forward. Kayla backed toward the grate, but there was nowhere to go, nowhere to run. The Alpha King will know, Kayla said desperately. He'll figure it out. He'll grieve. He'll rage. And then he'll accept that some bonds are too dangerous to honor. Lady Thorne's expression was almost pitying. Did you really think you could have him? A nobody's servant with no name, no family, no value? The world doesn't work that way, child. Kayla's back hit the grate. Cold metal dug into her spine. The guards were 3 steps away. 2 steps. She had seconds, maybe less, so she did the only thing she could think of. She screamed, not a scream for help, a scream of pure, wordless rage that echoed through the cisterns and up into the castle above. A scream that said, I existed, I mattered, you can't erase me. And something answered. The air in the cistern changed, pressure built like before a storm. The guard stopped, looking around in confusion. Lady Thorne's expression flickered with uncertainty. Then the grate behind Kayla exploded outward. She fell backward through the opening, hitting ground that was thankfully soft, mud and grass. Above her, the castle wall loomed. Behind her, the forest. And standing between her and freedom, Ronan. He looked like he'd torn through half the castle. His shirt was ripped. Blood stained his knuckles. His eyes burned gold and feral in the moonlight. He wasn't wearing a crown, wasn't carrying a sword. He looked less like a king and more like something wild that had been caged too long. His gaze found hers on the ground, and relief flooded his features so completely it hurt to see. Kayla. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Ronan turned to face the grate where Lady Thorne and her guards were emerging. His lip curled back from his teeth. You took her, he said softly, dangerously. You arrested her, imprisoned her, after I explicitly placed her under my protection. My lord, I was following council orders. The council doesn't give orders, I do. Ronan's voice dropped lower, something rumbling underneath it that wasn't quite human. And I ordered her protected. So either the council betrayed me or you acted without authority. Which is it? Lady Thorne's composure cracked slightly. She's a threat to the kingdom. The evidence is fabricated. I know, because I spent the last hour tearing your case apart in front of the entire council. Ronan took a step forward. Your witnesses recanted. Your evidence disappeared. Funny how that happens when people are more afraid of me than they are of you. You can't. I can. I did. And now I'm giving you a choice. He stopped directly in front of her. You can accept that your daughter wasn't chosen, leave Kayla alone and keep your position on the council. Or you can keep pushing, and I will dismantle everything you've built, your family's holdings, your political alliances, your daughter's marriage prospects, all of it, gone. Lady Thorne's face went white with rage. You wouldn't dare! Try me! Silence fell like a hammer. The guards looked between their lady and their king, clearly unsure who to obey. Lady Thorne's hands clenched into fists at her sides. This isn't over, she said finally. Yes, Ronan said quietly. It is. Guards, escort Lady Thorne back to her quarters. She's to remain there until the council formally reviews her conduct. The guards hesitated. Then, slowly, they moved to flank Lady Thorne instead of Kayla. One of them gestured toward the castle. Lady Thorne looked at Kayla one last time. The hatred in her eyes promised this was far from finished. Then she turned and walked back through the grate, spine rigid, every inch of her radiating fury. When she was gone, Ronan dropped to his knees beside Kayla. Are you hurt? His hands moved over her, checking for injuries, for damage. Did they? I'm fine. Her voice came out shaky. How did you find me? I felt you. He touched her face gently, like making sure she was real. The bond. When you screamed, I felt it like a knife to the chest. I was in the council chambers and I knew you were in danger. You left the council session? I left everything. He helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. The second I realized what Thorn had done, I walked out. They tried to stop me. I explained physically that they shouldn't. Despite everything, Kayla laughed. It came out slightly hysterical. You started a fight with the council? I started several fights. Lost count somewhere around the third lord who thought he could block my way. Ronan's thumb brushed across her cheek. You're bleeding. Just scraped from the wall. She stopped, her brain finally catching up with adrenaline. Vivian betrayed me. She gave me the key, said her mother would kill me, and it was all a trap to prove I was using magic. Ronan's jaw tightened. I know. Vivian confessed the whole thing to the council when I confronted her. Said her mother planned it. That she was just doing what she was told. Will she be punished? That's complicated. She's a pawn in her mother's games, but she still participated. He paused. The council wants answers, wants accountability, but right now, I don't care about any of that. Ronan, come here. He pulled her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her so tight she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking. I thought I lost you, thought I'd been too slow, too late, and you'd be gone before I could. Kayla pressed her face against his shoulder and let herself break. Just for a moment. Just long enough to release the terror that had been building since the moment she'd opened his chamber door. He held her through it. Didn't tell her to stop. Didn't try to fix it. Just held on like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. When she could breathe again, Kayla pulled back enough to see his face. What happens now? Now? Ronan's expression hardened. Now we leave. What? The castle isn't safe for you. Lady Thorn might be confined, but she has allies. The council is fractured. Half of them support me, half think I've lost my mind. He cupped her face in both hands. And I'm tired of fighting them. Tired of politics. Tired of everything that isn't this. You're the Alpha King. You can't just leave. Watch me. He kissed her forehead, gentle despite the wildness in his eyes. I have holdings in the outer territories. A lodge in the northern mountains where the council can't reach without my permission. We'll go there. Let things calm down. Let the council realize they don't have a choice. They'll call it abandonment. Let them. Ronan's smile was sharp. They need me more than I need them. When they're ready to accept you, we'll come back. Until then, I'm choosing you over politics, over duty, over everything. Kayla's throat tightened. That's insane. Probably. He pulled her toward the forest, already moving. But I told you, I don't do anything halfway, and I meant what I said. I will burn this entire kingdom down before I let anyone take you from me. They were halfway to the tree line when Kayla heard it. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. Multiple horses. Ronan heard it too. He tensed, pushing Kayla behind him. Stay close! Riders emerged from the direction of the main gates, at least a dozen, armed, moving with purpose. But the lead rider wasn't wearing Lady Thorn's colors. He wore the black and silver of the Alpha King's personal guard, and when he pulled his horse to a stop 20 feet away, Kayla recognized him. Marcus, the captain who'd been with Ronan in the tower. My lord, Marcus dismounted, dropping to one knee. The council's making their move. They're calling an emergency session to declare you unfit. Lady Thorn's claiming you're under a spell. They have documents, signatures. They're going to strip your title if you don't return and answer the charges. Ronan's entire body went rigid. On what grounds? Abandonment of duty, dereliction, choosing personal interests over kingdom security. Marcus's expression was grim. Half the lords are with you, but the other half, they see this as weakness, as proof that the bond has compromised your judgment. My judgment is fine. Then prove it. Marcus gestured back toward the castle. Come back. Face them. Show them you're still in control. No. Ronan didn't hesitate. They want me to choose between Kayla and the crown. I'm choosing her. End of discussion. My lord, if you don't return, then they'll pick a new Alpha King. someone more pliable, someone who'll play their political games. Ronan's hand found Kayla's, gripping tight. I don't care. Let them have it. Marcus's eyes widened. You're serious. Completely. Silence fell. The other guards looked at each other. Kayla could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Their king was choosing exile over duty, choosing a servant girl over power. It should have felt triumphant. It should have felt like winning. Instead, it felt like everything was falling apart. Ronan, Kayla said quietly, you can't do this. He looked down at her, confused. What? You can't give up your crown for me. Can't walk away from everything you are because... Her voice cracked. Because I'm not worth it. You are worth it. You're worth everything. No. She pulled her hand free from his. I'm a servant. I scrub floors. I have no family, no name, no value beyond what I can do with my hands. And you're the Alpha King. You have responsibilities, people who need you, a kingdom that will tear you apart the moment I turn my back. Ronan grabbed her shoulders. You think I can go back there, sit in council meetings and play politics while Lady Thorne plots your death, while nobles whisper that you've enchanted me? I can't do it, Kayla. I can't pretend this doesn't matter. Then make them accept it. She met his eyes. Not by running, not by choosing me over them, but by standing there and making them see that I'm not a threat, that the bond is real, that... A scream cut through the night. Everyone spun toward the sound. It had come from the forest, deep in the trees where the ritual clearing sat. Marcus's hand went to his sword. What was... Another scream, then shouting. The clash of weapons. The clearing, one of the guards said. Something's attacking. Ronan was already moving, not toward the castle, toward the forest, toward the sound of fighting. My lord, wait, Marcus called. We don't know what... But Ronan was running now, and Kayla ran after him because what else could she do? The guards followed, horses pounding behind them, everyone converging on the ritual clearing where this had all started. They burst through the trees and stopped. The clearing was chaos. People, villagers by the look of their clothes, were scattered across the ritual ground. Some were fighting, some were running. And in the center, where the ceremonial circle had been drawn, Lady Thorne stood with a knife. Not just any knife. The ceremonial blade used in bonding rituals. Silver. Ancient. Covered in markings that made Kayla's skin crawl just looking at them. And kneeling in front of her, bound and bleeding, was Vivian. Mother, please. Vivian was crying, makeup running down her face. Please, I did what you asked. You failed. Lady Thorne's voice was cold. Dead. The servant escaped. The Alpha King still protects her, and now I have no choice. What are you doing? Ronan's voice cut across the clearing like a whip. Lady Thorne looked up, smiled. It was the worst smile Kayla had ever seen. Fixing your mistake, she said. If you won't choose my daughter as your mate, then I'll force the bond myself. The old rituals still work, blood and will and sacrifice. All I need is... She raised the knife. Vivian screamed, and Kayla moved without thinking. She ran across the clearing, launched herself at Lady Thorne, hit her like a stone thrown at glass. They went down together. The knife flew from Lady Thorne's hand, spinning away into the grass. Kayla scrambled for it, fingers closing around the hilt. Lady Thorne grabbed her hair, yanked her backward. You little... Kayla twisted, brought the knife up, and drove it into Lady Thorne's shoulder. Not deep, not fatal, but enough. Enough to make her let go. Enough to stop her. Lady Thorne fell back, clutching her shoulder, eyes wide with shock. Blood welled between her fingers, dark and thick in the moonlight. Kayla stood over her, the ceremonial blade still in her hand, breathing hard. The entire clearing had gone silent. Ronan reached her first, his hands closed over hers on the knife. Kayla, let go. She did. Her fingers were shaking so hard the blade clattered when it hit the ground. Guards surrounded Lady Thorne. Marcus was cutting Vivian free. The villagers, whoever they were, stood frozen, watching. And Kayla stood in the center of it all, blood on her hands, her bare feet planted in the ritual circle where this nightmare had begun. She'd just stabbed a noblewoman, the head of the council, Lady Thorne, in front of witnesses. There was no coming back from this. There was no coming back from this. The thought echoed in Kayla's skull as she stared down at her hands, Lady Thorne's blood drying dark between her fingers. Around her, the clearing had gone so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the ragged breathing of Vivian still kneeling in the grass, could hear the villagers shifting, uncertain, waiting for someone to break the silence. Lady Thorne clutched her shoulder, her face gone white beneath perfectly applied makeup. The wound wasn't deep. Kayla had pulled back at the last second, some part of her unable to fully commit to murder. But blood seeped through the noblewoman's fingers, staining her burgundy dress black in the moonlight. "She attacked me," Lady Thorne gasped, her voice high and sharp with pain. "You all saw. The servant attacked me with a ceremonial blade. Proof she's been using dark magic all along." "Shut up!" Ronan's voice cut across her words like a blade. He stepped between Kayla and the guards, his body a wall of protection. "You were about to stab your own daughter. Everyone here saw that too. I was performing a ritual, a sacred ceremony to correct the mistake that you were attempting blood magic." Marcus moved forward, his sword still drawn, his expression disgusted. "Forcing a bond against the Alpha King's will. Against your daughter's will. That's forbidden. Has been for 200 years. Lady Thorne's eyes darted between the guards, searching for allies. "I was trying to save the kingdom from this enchantment. She's corrupted him, made him weak. Anyone with eyes can see. I see a woman who's so desperate to control her daughter's future that she nearly killed her." Ronan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Guards, take Lady Thorne into custody. Real custody this time. The kind with actual chains." "My lord, you can't—" One of the guards hesitated. The council can explain to me later why they allowed a woman to practice forbidden blood magic in the ritual clearing." Ronan's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Or they can stand aside and let me handle this. Their choice." The guards looked at each other. Then, slowly, they moved toward Lady Thorne. She backed away, still clutching her shoulder. "You're making a mistake, all of you. When the council hears about this, when they learn that you're protecting a servant who stabbed a noblewoman, they'll learn that I defended myself." Kayla's voice came out stronger than she expected. She stepped around Ronan, her bare feet silent on the grass. "You were holding a knife over your own daughter. You were going to kill her. I stopped you. That's not magic. That's not enchantment. That's just—" She paused, searching for words. "That's just refusing to let you hurt anyone else." Lady Thorne's laugh was brittle. "You think anyone will believe you? A nobody servant with no name, no family, no—" "I believe her." Vivian's voice, cracked and small, cut through her mother's words. Everyone turned. Vivian had pushed herself to her feet. Her hands were still bound. Marcus hadn't finished cutting the ropes, but she stood straight despite the blood on her dress, the tear tracks on her face. She looked at her mother with an expression that was equal parts grief and rage. "I believe her," Vivian repeated louder this time, "because you told me exactly what you were planning. You said if I couldn't be queen, you'd force the bond yourself. Use the old magic. Sacrifice whatever was necessary to secure our family's power." Her voice broke. "I thought you meant livestock, animals. I didn't think you meant—" "I meant to save you from a life of insignificance," Lady Thorne hissed. "Everything I've done, I did for our family, for our bloodline, to make sure you had the future you deserved." "I never asked for this." Vivian's shout echoed across the clearing. "I never wanted to be queen. I told you that 100 times, and you never listened. You just kept pushing and planning and treating me like a piece on a game board instead of a person." The guards had reached Lady Thorne now. They grabbed her arms, pulling them behind her back despite her wounded shoulder. She gasped in pain but didn't stop talking. "You'll regret this," she said, her eyes locked on Kayla. "All of you. When she shows her true nature. When the enchantment breaks and the Alpha King realizes what he's done." "Enough!" Ronan's command cracked like thunder. "Take her to the real dungeons, the ones with stone walls and iron doors, and someone find the High Priestess. I want every inch of this clearing checked for blood magic, every artifact, every marking, all of it." The guards dragged Lady Thorne away. She fought them, still ranting about corruption and enchantment and family honor, but her voice faded as they disappeared into the trees. Silence fell again. Heavier this time. Kayla stood in the center of the ritual circle, blood on her hands and bare feet planted in dirt that had soaked up centuries of ceremonies. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like at any moment someone would point at her and shout witch, and this would all collapse again. But instead, Vivian crossed the clearing and stopped directly in front of her. "Thank you," she said quietly. Kayla blinked. For what? For stopping her. For... Vivian's voice caught. "I knew she was desperate. I knew she wanted me to be chosen, but I didn't think she'd go that far. Didn't think she'd actually..." She wrapped her arms around herself, still trembling. "You saved my life. I stabbed your mother. She was going to kill me." Vivian's laugh was shaky. "So, yeah, thank you for stabbing my mother." Marcus approached, his knife already working on the ropes around Vivian's wrists. "My lady, are you hurt? Do you need..." "I'm fine, just..." The ropes fell away. Vivian rubbed her wrists, wincing at the raw marks. "I need to sit down, need to think, need to figure out what happens now that my mother's in chains and I just testified against her in front of half the kingdom." "What happens now," Ronan said, his voice gentler than Kayla had heard it, "is you tell the council exactly what you told us. That Lady Thorne was practicing forbidden magic, that she threatened you, that Kayla acted in defense. They won't believe me. They will, because I'll be standing next to you when you say it." He glanced at Marcus. "Get Lady Vivian to the castle, find her a healer, make sure she's comfortable, and send word to the council that I'm calling a full session at dawn." Marcus nodded and guided Vivian toward the horses. The other guards followed, leaving just a handful behind. Loyal ones, Kayla guessed, from the way they positioned themselves around Ronan without being asked. The villagers who'd witnessed everything were melting back into the forest. Probably smart. This wasn't their fight, and getting involved with noble politics was a good way to end up disappeared. Kayla looked down at her hands again. The blood was drying now, flaking off in the cold night air. She felt disconnected from her body, like she was watching this happen to someone else. "Kayla," Ronan's hands closed over hers. "Look at me." She did. His golden eyes were steady, certain, like he wasn't standing in a clearing where his mate had just stabbed a council member. "You did the right thing," he said. "I stabbed someone. You stopped someone from committing murder. There's a difference. The council won't see it that way. They'll see a servant who attacked a noblewoman. They'll see what I tell them to see." Ronan's grip tightened. "And I'm going to tell them that you acted with courage and honor, that you protected an innocent life, that you did what any decent person would do when faced with blood magic and insanity. You can't just rewrite reality because you want to. Watch me." He pulled her closer until their foreheads nearly touched. "I'm done playing by their rules, Kayla. Done pretending that politics matter more than what's right. Lady Thorne crossed a line tonight. She threatened my mate. She nearly killed her own daughter. She practiced magic that's been forbidden for centuries, so no, I'm not going to let the council twist this into something it's not." Kayla wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that somehow, against all logic, this would work out. But 3 years of being invisible had taught her that people like her didn't win, didn't get justice, didn't... "Come on." Ronan released one of her hands but kept hold of the other. "We're going back to the castle." "Ronan, I can't just walk into the council chambers covered in blood and..." "Yes, you can. Because you're walking in as my mate. Not as a servant. Not as someone who needs permission to exist." He started toward the horses, pulling her with him. "And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me. Directly. With swords." One of the guards brought forward a horse. Ronan's massive black warhorse from earlier. Ronan mounted in one smooth motion, then reached down for Kyla. She hesitated. "I don't know how to ride." "Then it's a good thing I do." He grabbed her arm and pulled her up in front of him, settled her sideways across his lap like she weighed nothing. "Hold on." Kayla barely had time to grab his shirt before the horse launched into motion. The world blurred. Trees, moonlight, the path back toward the castle. She pressed against Ronan's chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. "What happens at dawn?" she asked. "The council session, where we lay out everything that happened, where Vivian testifies, where the high priestess confirms the blood magic." He paused. Where I make them accept you. You can't force them to. I can do whatever I want. I'm the Alpha King. He said it simply, like it was just fact. And I'm choosing you, publicly, permanently, in front of the entire council. They can accept it, or they can find a new king. You'd really give up the crown? In a heartbeat, his arms tightened around her. But I don't think it'll come to that. Lady Thorne was the ringleader, the one pushing hardest for traditional bloodlines and political marriages. With her in chains, the council loses its sharpest weapon. They rode through the castle gates. Guards scrambled to attention, their eyes widening at the sight of their king carrying a blood-stained servant. Kayla wanted to sink into the horse's mane, wanted to disappear, but Ronan held her firm, visible, undeniable. He dismounted in the main courtyard, setting Kayla on her feet but keeping one hand on her waist. "Someone find the head housekeeper," he called out. "I want chambers prepared for Kayla Vire in the royal wing. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight." A servant scurried off. The remaining guards exchanged looks but didn't argue. "My lord," Marcus approached carefully, "perhaps Lady Kayla should be examined by a healer first, to ensure she's not injured?" Kayla opened her mouth to say she was fine, but Ronan was already nodding. "Good idea. Kayla, go with Marcus. Get cleaned up. Get checked over. I'll handle the council preparation." "Ronan, please." He cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Let me take care of this part. You've done enough for one night." She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle herself, but exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave, and the adrenaline that had carried her through the clearing was draining away fast. "Okay," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, quick and gentle, then released her to Marcus's care. The guard led her through familiar corridors that felt foreign now. Servants stared, whispered, but no one tried to stop her. No one questioned her presence in the upper levels. The healer's wing was warm and smelled of herbs. An older woman, the head healer, judging by her badges, took one look at Kayla and pursed her lips. "Strip," she said without preamble. "I need to see if any of that blood is yours." Kayla peeled off the ruined servant's dress. The healer examined her efficiently, checking the scrape on her shoulder from the wall, the cuts on her feet from running barefoot, the bruises blooming across her ribs from when the guards had thrown her into the cell. "Nothing life-threatening," the healer announced, "though you're half-starved and covered in enough dirt to grow potatoes. When's the last time you ate a real meal?" Kayla thought about it. 2 days ago? The healer swore under her breath. "Idiots. Running you ragged while the nobles stuffed themselves." She handed Kayla a clean robe. "Put this on. I'm getting you food and a bath, in that order. The Alpha King will have my head if I send you back looking like a corpse." The food came first. Bread, cheese, cold meat, and soup that tasted like it had been simmering for days. Kayla ate mechanically, barely tasting it, her mind spinning ahead to the council session, to what would happen when she had to stand in front of those nobles and— "Stop thinking," the healer said. "I can see your brain eating itself from here." "I stabbed Lady Thorne." "She deserved it." The healer refilled Kayla's bowl. "That woman's been poisoning this castle's politics for 20 years. About time someone shut her up." "The council won't see it that way." "The council," the healer said dryly, "can go choke on their own importance. Now finish eating before I force-feed you." The bath came next. Hot water in a tub big enough to swim in, with soaps that smelled like flowers Kayla couldn't name. She scrubbed Lady Thorne's blood from under her fingernails, washed the dungeon filth from her hair, watched the water turn brown and gray as 3 years of invisible servitude circled the drain. When she emerged, clean clothes were waiting, not a servant's uniform, a real dress, simple but well-made in deep green that brought out the amber in her eyes, soft leather shoes that actually fit, a brush for her hair. Kayla stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl looking back. "Better," the healer approved. "Now you look like someone worth fighting for." A knock at the door. Marcus again, his expression carefully neutral. "The Alpha King requests your presence in his chambers." Kayla's stomach flipped. "The council session isn't until dawn." "It's not about the council." Marcus's lips twitched slightly. "He just wants to see you." The walk to Ronan's chambers felt both endless and too short. Guards nodded as she passed, actually acknowledged her instead of looking through her. Servants stepped aside. A few even bowed slightly. It was surreal. Marcus knocked at the carved doors. "My lord, Lady Kayla." "Send her in." Marcus opened the door, gestured for Kayla to enter, then closed it behind her. Ronan stood by the window, his back to the room. He changed clothes, clean shirt, dark pants, and washed the blood from his hands. But tension still radiated from every line of his body. "How are you?" he asked without turning. "Clean, fed, thoroughly examined by a healer who thinks the council can choke." Kayla moved closer. "How are you?" "Furious." He turned to face her, and the anger in his eyes was banked but burning. "I've spent the last hour reviewing castle records. Do you know how long you've been working here?" 3 years. 3 years. And in that time, you were paid less than half the standard servant wage, housed in a closet that technically violates kingdom safety codes, fed from the scrap tables instead of the staff kitchen." His jaw tightened. "And no one, not one person in this entire castle, thought to report it, because you were nobody. Nothing, not worth the paperwork." Kayla wrapped her arms around herself. "That's how it works when you don't have family. When you're not just anything." Ronan crossed to her in 3 strides. "And starting tomorrow, everyone in this castle is going to know that. But tonight," he paused, some of the anger draining from his expression. "Tonight I need you to tell me something." "What? Do you want this?" He gestured vaguely at the room, the castle, everything. "Do you want to be my mate? Or are you just going along with it because you're scared of what happens if you say no?" Kayla's breath caught. "What?" "I've been thinking about it. About how we met. About how I've been making decisions for you, protecting you, moving you, telling you what to do." Ronan's hands clenched at his sides. "And I realized I never actually asked what you wanted, never gave you a real choice, just assumed the bond meant I want this." The words came out before she could stop them, loud and certain. "I want you, not because I'm scared, not because I don't have anywhere else to go, but because when you looked at me in that forest, I felt like I existed for the first time in my life." Something in Ronan's expression cracked. "Kayla, I've been invisible for so long I forgot what it felt like to matter, to have someone see me and not just look through me like I'm made of glass." She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "So yes, I want this. Want you. Even though it's terrifying and impossible and probably going to get me killed, I want it." Ronan's hands came up to frame her face. "You're not going to get killed. You can't promise that. Watch me." He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. "I've never wanted anything the way I want you. Never felt anything like this bond. And I'm not going to let politics or councils or anyone else take it away." Kayla's hands found his shirt, gripping the fabric. "What if they make you choose, Crown or me? Then I choose you. Every time, without hesitation." His thumb brushed across her cheek. "But I don't think it'll come to that, because you did something tonight that no one expected. Stabbed a noblewoman. Showed courage. His smile was small but real. You stood in that clearing with blood on your hands and told the truth. Didn't hide, didn't run. Just stood there and owned what you'd done. That's not weakness. That's strength the council understands. They still think I'm nothing. Then tomorrow we prove them wrong." He kissed her forehead, gentle, despite the intensity in his eyes. Together. A clock somewhere in the castle chimed midnight. The council session was 6 hours away. 6 hours to prepare, to rest, to gather whatever strength they'd need to face the nobles who wanted Kayla gone and Ronan controlled. "You should sleep," Ronan said quietly. "The healers said you're exhausted. So are you. I'll sleep after the council session. After—" He stopped, his expression shifting to something uncertain. "Actually, I have something for you. I was going to wait, but—" He crossed to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small wooden box. Kayla's heart kicked up. "What is that?" "Something I had made while you were with the healers." He opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a ring. Simple silver band with a single stone. Not a diamond, but something else. Something that caught the firelight and threw it back in shades of amber and gold. It's a bonding ring, Ronan said, in the old tradition, before councils and politics got involved, when mates chose each other, and that was enough. He took it from the box, holding it carefully. I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet, but I'm asking you to wear this, to let everyone know you're mine and I'm yours, that this is real. Kayla stared at the ring, at the way it caught the light, at the way Ronan held it like it was both precious and fragile. If I wear that, she said slowly, there's no taking it back, no pretending this was temporary. The council will know, everyone will know. That's the point. He met her eyes. So what do you say? Will you choose me, publicly, tomorrow, when we face them all? Kayla looked at the ring, at Ronan, at the future spreading out before her like uncharted territory. 3 days ago, she'd been nobody, nothing, a servant girl with no name worth remembering. Now she was standing in the Alpha King's chambers, wearing a dress that fit, with a choice that would change everything. She could say no, could walk away, could disappear back into invisibility and safety. Or she could say yes, could choose the terrifying, impossible thing, could bet everything on the bond that had started with a forbidden glance in the forest. Yes, Kayla whispered, then louder. Yes, I choose you. Ronan's smile was like sunrise. He took her hand, her left hand, and slid the ring onto her fourth finger. It fit perfectly. The amber stone caught the firelight, throwing golden sparks across her skin. There, he said quietly. Now everyone will know. Kayla flexed her fingers, watching the ring move. It felt strange, heavy, like a promise and a target all at once. What happens tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow we walk into that council chamber together. We tell them what happened. We show them the ring. We make them accept that this is real and permanent and not going away. Ronan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. And if they refuse, if they push back, we stand our ground, together. Together, Kayla echoed. She let herself lean against him, feeling his heartbeat under her cheek, let herself imagine a future where this worked, where she wasn't invisible, where she mattered. It felt fragile, impossible, like something that could shatter with one wrong word. But she was going to fight for it anyway. They stood like that for a long time, the fire crackling in the hearth, the castle settling into nighttime quiet around them. Eventually, Ronan guided her to the bed, his bed, and they lay down together. Not doing anything, just existing in the same space. His arms around her, her head on his chest, the ring heavy and real on her finger. Kayla didn't think she'd be able to sleep, but exhaustion finally pulled her under, dragging her into darkness. She woke to someone shaking her shoulder. Kayla, wake up! Her eyes snapped open. Ronan was already dressed, fully armed, his expression grim in the pre-dawn light filtering through the windows. What's wrong? She asked. The council moved the session up. They're gathering now. He handed her the green dress from last night. We need to go. Marcus says they've been in the Great Hall for an hour already. Planning, strategizing. Kayla's stomach dropped. That's bad. That's them trying to get ahead of us, trying to control the narrative before we can. Ronan's jaw tightened. Get dressed, quickly. I'm not giving them any more time to dig in. She dressed in record time, her fingers fumbling with the laces. The ring caught the light as she moved, a constant reminder of what she was walking into. Ronan took her hand as they left his chambers. His grip was steady. Sure, like he was anchoring her to reality. They walked through corridors that were too quiet. Servants had made themselves scarce. Guards stood at attention but didn't meet their eyes. The whole castle felt like it was holding its breath. The Great Hall's doors loomed ahead, massive oak panels carved with the history of the Drake family. Beyond them, Kayla could hear voices, arguments, the sound of the council in full debate. Ready? Ronan asked. No, not even close. Yes, Kayla lied. He squeezed her hand once, then pushed the doors open. The Great Hall fell silent. Every noble in the Northern Territories seemed to be crammed inside. The council members at the head table, lesser lords along the sides, scribes and advisors clustered in corners. And at the center of it all, standing like she owned the room despite the bandage on her shoulder, Lady Thorne. She wasn't in chains, wasn't imprisoned. She stood free and composed, surrounded by allies, looking at Ronan and Kayla with an expression of cold triumph. There you are, she said pleasantly. We were just discussing your situation. Ronan's entire body went rigid. You're supposed to be in the dungeons. The council reviewed my case and determined that my actions, while questionable, were motivated by legitimate concern for the kingdom's safety. Lady Thorne gestured to the assembled nobles. They've agreed to release me pending a formal investigation. An investigation into whether you practiced blood magic? An investigation into whether I was correct about your mate being a threat. Lady Thorne's smile was razor sharp. Because shortly after you left the clearing last night, the High Priestess made a very interesting discovery. The High Priestess stepped forward. She looked uncomfortable, scared even, but she met Ronan's eyes and spoke clearly. The ritual circle has been contaminated, she said. There are markings beneath the original ceremony grounds. Old markings, the kind used in summoning magic. Kayla's blood turned to ice. Summoning what? Ronan demanded. Mate bonds. The High Priestess's voice was barely a whisper. Someone carved a summoning circle designed to force a bond where none naturally existed, and based on the fresh disturbance in the soil, she paused. It was activated recently, within the last week. Every eye in the hall turned to Kayla. You see, Lady Thorne said softly, I told them she was using magic, and now we have proof. The word proof hung in the air like a noose. Kayla felt every eye in the hall boring into her, felt the weight of accusation pressing down until she could barely breathe. The ring on her finger suddenly felt less like a promise and more like evidence. Another piece of the trap Lady Thorne had been weaving since the moment Kayla had looked at Ronan through the trees. That's impossible, Ronan said, his voice hard as stone. Kayla doesn't have magic. She's never studied it, never even seen a summoning circle before that clearing. So she claims. Lady Thorne's smile was poisonous. But the evidence speaks otherwise. Fresh markings beneath the ritual ground, a bond that formed against all natural law, an alpha king who abandoned duty for a servant girl. She turned to address the council directly. I ask you, which is more likely? That his wolf truly chose her, or that she manipulated fate itself? Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Kayla could see the calculation in their faces, the willingness to believe the worst because it was easier than accepting the truth. The High Priestess said the markings were recently activated, one of the council members said. Within the last week, that would mean they were already there, Kayla interrupted, her voice cutting across the murmurs. Before I ever went to that clearing. The hall went quiet again. Explain, the council member said. Kayla's hands were shaking, but she forced them still. I didn't go to the ritual clearing until 3 nights ago, the night of the choosing ceremony. That was the first time I'd ever been in that forest. She looked directly at Lady Thorne. So if there are markings that were activated within the last week, someone else put them there. Someone who knew the ceremony was coming. Someone who wanted to manipulate the bond. Lady Thorne's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Just for a second. Ronan caught it too. The High Priestess said the markings were designed to force a bond where none naturally existed, to summon one into being. He turned to face the council. Who benefits from that? Who's been trying to control the choosing ceremony for the last 20 years? How dare you, Lady Thorne hissed. I would never... You were literally holding a ceremonial knife over your daughter's head last night. Vivian's voice, clear and strong, cut through her mother's protest. She stepped forward from where she'd been standing at the side of the hall, still wearing bandages on her wrists. You were going to force a bond through blood magic. You told me as much. So why is it so hard to believe you'd prepare backup plans? Lady Thorne's face went white, then red. You ungrateful High Priestess. Ronan's command silenced the hall. When exactly were those markings made? The High Priestess looked uncomfortable. It's difficult to say precisely. The carving is old, centuries old perhaps. But the activation... She paused. The activation requires fresh blood and specific words spoken during a celestial alignment. The next alignment was 4 days ago, one of the council's scholars supplied. The triple moon conjunction. It happens once every 5 years. 4 days ago. Before Kayla had ever gone to the clearing, before she'd even thought about breaking the law. So someone activated ancient summoning magic 4 days before the choosing ceremony, Ronan said slowly, clearly, making sure every word landed. Someone who knew about those markings. Someone who had access to the clearing, someone who desperately wanted to control who I chose. He turned to Lady Thorne. Would you like to explain how a servant girl with no education and no resources could have known about 5-year celestial alignments and centuries-old summoning circles? The silence was deafening. Lady Thorne's jaw worked. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. You have no proof that We have your daughter's testimony about the blood magic. We have your attempted murder of that same daughter. We have decades of you manipulating council decisions to benefit your family. Ronan's voice was ice. And now we have summoning magic that was activated exactly when you needed it to ensure your daughter's selection. So forgive me if I'm not inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt. My lord, one of the older council members interjected carefully, these are serious accusations. Without concrete evidence that Lady Thorne specifically performed the summoning, I can provide that evidence. A new voice from the back of the hall. Everyone turned. Pip stood in the doorway. The stable boy looked terrified. His face was still bruised from Lady Thorne's guards, but he held a leather satchel in his hands and his jaw was set with determination. Who are you? The council member demanded. Pip, I work in the stables. The boy walked forward, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. And 4 days ago, I saw Lady Thorne in the forest, late at night. She was carrying something, looked like old scrolls and a knife. I followed her because it seemed strange. Lady Thorne's face had gone from red to ashen. That's a lie. He's a servant. He's probably been bribed to... I watched you carve symbols into the ground at the center of the ritual circle, Pip continued, his voice growing stronger. Watched you cut your palm and bleed onto them. Watched you speak words I didn't understand while the 3 moons were all visible. He held up the satchel. And after you left, I went back and found these. You dropped them. He opened the satchel, pulled out scrolls covered in writing that looked older than the castle itself, pulled out a silver knife with dried blood on the blade. The high priestess gasped. Those are forbidden texts from the restricted archives. No one's supposed to have access to those except the head of the noble council, Ronan finished, which Lady Thorne happens to be. The evidence spread across the council table like poison. The scrolls, the knife, Pip's testimony, Vivian's confirmation. The timing that matched perfectly. Lady Thorne stared at it all with an expression of absolute rage. Not guilt, not shame, just pure, undiluted fury at being caught. This proves nothing, she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. A servant's word against mine. Scrolls that could have come from anywhere. You can't... I can. Ronan's hand found Kayla's, gripping tight. And I will. Because you didn't just try to manipulate the bond. You tried to frame my mate for your own crimes, tried to have her arrested, imprisoned, killed, all to cover up your own forbidden magic. She's still a servant. Lady Thorne's composure finally cracked completely. A nobody. She has no family, no name, no value beyond scrubbing your floors. And you're the Alpha King. You're supposed to choose someone worthy, someone who can actually... She stabbed you to save your daughter's life. Ronan's voice cut like a blade, while you were planning to murder that same daughter to steal a bond that was never meant for her. So tell me, who's actually worthy here? The hall erupted, nobles shouting, council members arguing, guards moving to restrain Lady Thorne as she lunged toward the evidence table. And in the center of it all, Kayla stood holding Ronan's hand and tried to process what had just happened. The trap had sprung, but not on her. On Lady Thorne. The woman had been so focused on destroying Kayla that she'd left evidence of her own crimes scattered like breadcrumbs, had underestimated a stable boy's loyalty, had believed her daughter would stay silent forever, had made the same mistake she'd accused others of making, assuming that people without power didn't matter. Order! The eldest council member slammed his staff against the floor. Order in this hall! The shouting died down. Guards had Lady Thorne by the arms now, holding her still. She'd stopped fighting, but her eyes burned with hatred as she stared at Kayla. Lady Elara Thorne, the council member intoned, you stand accused of practicing forbidden magic, attempting murder, falsifying evidence, and manipulating sacred rituals. How do you answer these charges? Lady Thorne's laugh was brittle. I answer that I did what was necessary. What any of you would have done to protect your family's future, to maintain the proper order, to prevent... She gestured wildly at Kayla. To prevent this abomination. Abomination? Ronan's voice was dangerously quiet. Yes, a servant bonded to an alpha king. It violates every law of nature and society. It undermines the entire structure we've built. If you allow this, if you legitimize this bond, you open the door to chaos, to servants thinking they can rise above their station, to the natural order collapsing into— The natural order, Vivian interrupted, nearly got me killed last night, by my own mother. So forgive me if I'm not too concerned about maintaining it. Lady Thorne turned to her daughter, and for the first time, Kayla saw something like pain in her expression. Vivian, you don't understand. Everything I did for you, for our family, for power. Vivian's voice was flat. You did it for power, and you were willing to sacrifice me to keep it. So no, Mother, I don't understand. I don't think I ever will. The council member cleared his throat. Given the evidence presented and the testimony of multiple witnesses, this council finds Lady Thorne guilty of the charges brought against her. She is hereby stripped of her title as head of the Noble Council and will be imprisoned pending formal sentencing. Guards began dragging Lady Thorne toward the doors. She fought them, still ranting about proper order and bloodlines and abominations. Her voice echoed through the hall until the doors slammed shut, cutting it off. Silence fell again. This time it felt different, less hostile, more uncertain. The council member turned to Ronan. My lord, regarding the bond between yourself and Kayla Vire is legitimate, Ronan said firmly. The summoning magic was meant to force a bond with Vivian. It failed because my wolf had already chosen Kayla, naturally, without manipulation. How can you be certain? Because I felt it the moment she looked at me. Ronan's hand tightened on Kayla's. Before any summoning could have taken effect, before any magic could have touched us, I felt the bond snap into place, and it was real. As real as anything I've ever known. The High Priestess stepped forward. My lord, if I may, I'd like to examine the bond, to confirm its nature. Kayla tensed. What does that mean? It means I'll observe the connection between you and the Alpha King. See if there are any traces of external magic, any signs of forced manipulation. The High Priestess's expression was kind. It won't hurt, I promise. Ronan looked at Kayla. Do you trust me? She thought about it, about everything that had happened in 3 days, about how he'd protected her, chosen her, stood beside her against an entire council. Yes, she said. The High Priestess approached, her hands already glowing with soft light. She placed one palm over Kayla's heart and one over Ronan's. Closed her eyes, breathed slowly. The light grew brighter. Kayla felt warmth spreading through her chest. Not painful, but intense. Like something inside her was responding to the priestess's touch. Then the High Priestess gasped. Her eyes snapped open. She stared at Kayla with an expression of pure shock. What? Ronan demanded. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's just— The High Priestess removed her hand slowly. The bond is completely natural. No traces of summoning magic, no external manipulation. But there's something else. She paused. Something I've only read about in the oldest texts. Explain. The High Priestess looked at Kayla with something like awe. You have latent magic, old magic, the kind that runs in bloodlines thought to be extinct. It's been dormant your entire life, probably because you've never been in a situation where it needed to activate. But last night, when you were in danger, when you screamed in that cistern, she gestured helplessly. You called to him, and he answered. That's not something regular bonds can do. Kayla's world tilted. I have magic? Yes, protective magic, the kind that shields mates from harm, that strengthens bonds. The High Priestess turned to address the council. This is why the Alpha King's wolf chose her. Not because of her station or her family, but because his instincts recognized what she truly is. Someone with the power to protect and strengthen him. To make him better. Murmurs rippled through the hall again, but this time they sounded different, less hostile, more awed. Dormant bloodline magic, one of the scholars said. That's extraordinarily rare. The last recorded case was 300 years ago, another finished. During the Great Wars, when the Alpha King's mate used protective magic to save an entire battalion. They were looking at Kayla like she'd transformed into something else entirely, like she'd gone from servant to legend in the space of a heartbeat. It was terrifying. I don't know how to use it, Kayla said quickly. I didn't even know it existed until 30 seconds ago. I'm not. You will be. The High Priestess smiled. With training, with time, but the magic is there. Undeniable. And it proves beyond doubt that this bond is not only natural, but destined. The eldest council member stood. Then it appears we owe Lady Kayla an apology, and the Alpha King our support. He bowed slightly. My lord, if you wish to formalize the bond, the council will approve it. I don't need your approval, Ronan said flatly, but I appreciate the gesture. A few of the nobles laughed. The tension in the hall was dissolving, not completely, but enough. Enough that Kayla could finally breathe without feeling like the walls were closing in. Vivian approached, looking exhausted but relieved. For what it's worth, I'm glad it was you. Glad his wolf chose someone who actually cares about him instead of his crown. Kayla didn't know what to say to that. Thank you? Don't thank me yet. You're going to have to learn politics now. Council meetings, diplomatic dinners. How to smile at people you hate. Vivian's smile was wry. It's worse than any dungeon, I promise. I'll survive. I know you will. Vivian glanced at Ronan. Take care of her. She stabbed my mother for me. I owe her. You don't owe me anything, Kayla said. I owe you everything. Vivian squeezed her hand once, then stepped back. The council session continued for another hour. Formal declarations, administrative details, assignments of Lady Thorne's former duties. Kayla stood through it all, Ronan's hand steady in hers, the ring on her finger catching light. When it finally ended, when the nobles filed out and the great hall emptied, Kayla let herself sag against Ronan. Is it over? She whispered. The immediate crisis? Yes. Everything else? He kissed the top of her head. We'll figure it out as we go. Marcus appeared at the door. My lord, the staff is asking what to do with Lady Kayla's old quarters. Burn them, Ronan said immediately. Or convert them to actual storage. I don't care which. She won't be sleeping in a closet ever again. And her new quarters? Are with me, in the royal wing, permanently. Ronan looked down at Kayla. Unless you want your own space, I can have rooms prepared. I want to be with you, Kayla said, if that's allowed. If the council won't, I don't care what the council thinks. He pulled her closer. You're my mate. That means you belong wherever I am, and right now, that's here. They walked back to his chambers together. The corridors felt different now. Servants bowed as they passed. Guards saluted. People saw her, really saw her, not as an invisible servant, but as someone who mattered. It was overwhelming. Back in Ronan's chambers, their chambers now, Kayla finally let herself collapse onto the bed. Every muscle ached. Her head spun. The events of the last 3 days crashed over her like a wave. I have magic, she said to the ceiling. Apparently. Apparently? Ronan sat beside her, his hand finding hers. How do you feel about that? Terrified. Confused. Like someone's going to wake me up any second, and this will all be a dream. It's not a dream. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing the ring on her finger. Though I understand the feeling, 3 days ago I was preparing to choose a noble daughter I'd never met. Now I'm bonded to a woman who climbed through my ventilation system and stabbed a council member. Despite everything, Kayla laughed. When you put it that way, it sounds insane. It is insane, but it's also real. He lay down beside her, pulling her against his chest, and I wouldn't change any of it. They lay there for a long time, just breathing, just existing together. The morning sun climbed higher, painting the room in golden light. Eventually, Kayla spoke. What happens now? With Lady Thorne? With the council? With... She gestured vaguely. Everything? Now we rebuild. Thorne will be tried properly, sentenced according to law. Vivian will probably take her mother's seat on the council. She's smart enough, and she's earned the respect after standing against her own family. Ronan's thumb traced circles on her shoulder. The council will need time to accept you fully. Some of them will resist. but they'll come around when they see that I'm not changing my mind. And my magic? The High Priestess will train you, teach you to control it, use it, turn it from dormant potential into actual power. He paused. Though honestly, I think you've been using it without knowing. The way you survived 3 years in that closet, the way you knew to come to my chambers instead of running, the way you fought back against Thorn. That's not just courage. That's instinct guided by magic you didn't know you had. Kayla thought about that, about all the times she'd made decisions that seemed reckless but turned out right, about how she'd always felt like she was meant for something more, even when the world told her she was nothing. Maybe it hadn't been delusion. Maybe it had been magic, dormant and waiting. I want to bring Pip with us, she said suddenly, into the castle proper. Give him a real position, not just stable work. Ronan smiled. Already done. I've appointed him as my personal messenger. It comes with quarters in the servants' wing, actual quarters, not closets, and triple the standard wage. He earned it. And the other servants? The ones who've been living in closets and eating scraps? I've ordered a full review of staff conditions. Anyone being mistreated will be moved. Anyone responsible for the mistreatment will be dismissed. His expression hardened. I won't have people suffering in my castle while nobles feast. Not anymore. Kayla turned to look at him. You're changing things. You're changing things. I'm just following your lead. He cupped her face. You showed me what I'd been blind to, made me see the people I was supposed to be protecting. So yes, things are going to change, starting with making sure no one else has to climb through ventilation shafts to be heard. A knock at the door interrupted them. Ronan swore under his breath but stood, crossing to answer it. Marcus stood outside, holding a bundle of fabric. The head seamstress sent this, said Lady Kayla will need proper clothing for the formal bonding ceremony. What ceremony? Kayla asked. The one where we make this official in front of the entire kingdom. Ronan took the bundle, a dress, Kayla realized, in deep blue with silver embroidery. It's tradition. The Alpha King presents his mate to the people, receives their blessing. And if they don't give it, then we proceed anyway, and they deal with it. Ronan set the dress on a chair. But I don't think that'll be a problem. Not after word spreads about the protective magic. People respect power. And you have it. The dress was beautiful, more than beautiful. It was the kind of thing Kayla had only ever seen from a distance, hanging in noble women's wardrobes while she scrubbed their floors. When? She asked. 3 days. Gives us time to prepare, to let the news spread. Ronan paused. To let you decide if you really want this. Because once we do the ceremony, there's no going back. You'll be bonded to me legally, magically, publicly. The council can't undo it. Lady Thorn can't touch it. It's permanent. Kayla looked at the dress, at the ring on her finger, at Ronan standing there offering her a choice she'd never thought she'd have. I want it, she said. All of it, even the terrifying parts. His smile was like sunrise. Then 3 days it is. Those 3 days passed in a blur. Kayla met with the High Priestess, who began teaching her meditation techniques to sense her magic. Met with the head seamstress for dress fittings. Met with council members who wanted to apologize or assess, or simply see the servant girl who'd become a legend. Pip moved into his new quarters and immediately started organizing Ronan's message system with ruthless efficiency. Vivienne took her seat on the council and promptly proposed reforms to servant treatment that made half the nobles choke on their wine. And Lady Thorn remained in her cell, awaiting trial, her power dismantled piece by piece. The morning of the ceremony, Kayla woke early. The dress hung on the wardrobe door, catching light. The ring gleamed on her finger. Ronan was already awake, standing at the window watching the sun rise over the northern forest. Ready? He asked without turning. No, but I'm doing it anyway. He laughed. That's the spirit. The ceremony took place in the Great Hall, which had been transformed with banners and flowers and enough candles to light the entire castle. The council sat at the high table. Nobles filled the lower seats, and servants, actual servants, not just the pretty ones, lined the walls, watching with expressions that ranged from awe to hope. Kayla walked in wearing the blue dress, her hair braided with silver thread, the ring on her finger impossible to miss. She felt exposed, vulnerable, Like at any moment, someone would shout that this was all a mistake. But Ronan met her halfway, offering his hand. And when she took it, when their fingers intertwined, she felt the bond hum between them, warm and real and undeniable. The high priestess performed the ceremony. Ancient words in the old tongue, blessings of strength and protection and unity. She bound their hands with a silver cord, tied 3 knots, and declared them mated before witnesses. The hall erupted in applause. Not everyone clapped. A few nobles sat stone-faced. A few whispered to each other. But most accepted it. Because they didn't have a choice. Because the Alpha King had chosen, and that choice was law. After the ceremony, there was a feast. Kayla sat at the high table beside Ronan, eating food she'd only ever served before, drinking wine that cost more than she'd earned in a year. People approached to offer congratulations or assess this new power dynamic. Vivian brought her a glass of something sparkly. To surviving your first formal event without stabbing anyone, Kayla raised her glass.
The night's not over yet. Vivian laughed. Actually laughed. I like you. Don't let the politics drown that out. As the feast wound down, as nobles began filtering out, Ronan leaned close to Kayla. Want to see something? What? Come with me. He led her out of the great hall, through corridors she was still learning, upstairs and through passages until they reached the highest tower in the castle. A door opened onto a balcony that overlooked the entire northern territory. The view stole her breath. Forest stretching to the horizon, mountains in the distance, the ritual clearing just visible through the trees, the place where everything had started. I used to come up here when I felt trapped, Ronan said quietly, when the council and the politics and all of it got to be too much. I'd stand here and remind myself why it mattered, why I couldn't just walk away. And now? Now I don't feel trapped. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Now I have someone who makes all of it bearable, who makes me want to be better, stronger, not for duty or tradition, but because you deserve nothing less. Kayla leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and sure. I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. Because you're stuck with me now, permanently, publicly, no takebacks. He kissed the top of her head. Think you can handle that? She thought about the girl she'd been 3 days ago, the one who scrubbed floors and slept in closets and thought she'd never matter. She thought about the woman she was becoming, the one with dormant magic and a bond to an Alpha King and a voice people actually listened to. It was terrifying, overwhelming, impossible. It was everything. Yeah, Kayla said, turning to face him. I can handle that. He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. And standing there on that balcony, with the northern territories spread out below and the future stretching ahead, Kayla finally let herself believe. She wasn't nothing, wasn't invisible, wasn't powerless. She was Kayla Vire, mate to the Alpha King, possessor of protective magic, survivor of dungeons and councils and noble woman's schemes, and she was just getting started. Below, in the castle, servants were being moved to better quarters. Wages were being reviewed. Policies were being rewritten. The old order was cracking, and something new was growing in its place. Something better. Something that had started with a forbidden glimpse in the forest and a bond that refused to be broken. Ronan pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I love you, he said. Simple. Direct. Like it was the easiest truth in the world. Kayla's breath caught. I love you too. Good. His smile was soft, genuine, the kind of expression she'd never seen him wear in front of the council. Because we've got a lot of work ahead of us. Rebuilding the council, training your magic, dealing with nobles who think servants shouldn't have power. It's going to be hard. I know. But we'll do it together. Together, Kayla agreed. They stood there as the sun climbed higher, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Stood there as the kingdom woke below them, adjusting to a new reality where servant girls could become queens and ancient bonds could reshape destiny. Stood there as the impossible became real. And for the first time in her life, Kayla felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not in a closet, not scrubbing floors, not invisible. Here, present, undeniable, chosen. The northern wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and possibility.
Somewhere in the forest, wolves howled, calling to each other, announcing pack bonds and territorial claims. Ronin's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. The ring caught the light, throwing golden sparks across the stone balcony. "Ready to change the world?" he asked. Kayla looked out at the territory spread before them, at the castle full of people who'd spent years invisible, voiceless, powerless, at the future waiting to be shaped. "Yeah," she said, "let's change the world." And hand in hand, the Alpha King and the servant girl who'd stopped a ritual walked back into the castle to do exactly that.